Sites to Celebrate showcases a dozen historic sites across the Roe Jan region, each with its own distinct story. From well-known landmarks to hidden gems, and a few that have only recently stepped into the historical spotlight, this exhibition explores the rich strata of our local history. The exhibit is multifaceted. Artifacts and stories from each site are displayed at the Historical Society, and pre-scheduled guided visits to the actual locations are offered on selected Sunday afternoons. Whether you're a lifelong resident or a curious visitor, join us in celebrating the places that have shaped our community. Ice harvesting first became a major industry in Columbia County during the 1830s. By the early 1850s, when the New York and Harlem Railroad reached Columbia County, enough ice was being produced to keep perishable agricultural goods chilled during transport to New York City for much of the year. Many farmers relied on ice harvesting for income during the winter months and often had their own teams of horses. The ice had to be at least 10 inches thick to allow men and horses to walk on it during the cutting process.
I bought that sign just because I felt that the site deserved some type of marking.
You said, I think the sign says 34.
It says 34 or 35 is when it burned. That's when it burned down. Pretty sure the construction started in 27 when they got their first loan.
7 years.
Didn't go too long.
No.
Didn't go too long.
You wonder.
Why'd they do it if they knew electricity was coming? I don't know. It's kind of weird. All that work. Putting a rail spur. I mean, just think about that. That's no mean.
No.
That one's pretty solid. But just to give you a sense of how big this is, that's an 8,000 square foot building that's absolutely dwarfed by how big this ice house was. Pictures of the day after it burnt don't really do it justice in how huge and magnificent it was. This is the kind of stuff that's all over. These were tie rods that held the wood together. We're going to walk the foundation. Do the easy walk first. How about that? 50,000 tons of ice. It's hard to put your mind on. So just you can get a better perspective of the size of the building. There's the trestle that goes across the pond that's now a dam. And Zecchi's Pond used to be much bigger, right? And the railroad trestle cut it in half, changed the water flow. So the landowners around it still work hard to keep this as a nice pond, but the other half is really turning into a marsh. Train came right through Prairieville, and the spur went out and connected in there. And the train was just used to move the ice to get it out to some of the local mansions, but mostly so the farmers could get their milk to the city all summer.
The Prairieville train depot was built around 1853 and until the 1970s served a busy rural community offering both passenger and freight service. The depot remains one of the few surviving testaments to Columbia County's railroad era and is preserved by current owners Carl and Lily Skogabig.
Just asking Carl what attracted him to this property and
the fact that it's so untouched.
Right.
That was the main reason that this is all completely intact. So that really attracted my wife and I at the time. And we really, wow kind of thing. So really, we're interested in buying it. So like I said, this summer I'm going to see if I can repaint this outside wall here because it's really peeling. Yeah, keep the same color.
it's a miracle.
It is. It's like I said, it's amazing how untouched it is. It's incredible. So
And the fact that things are still on the wall.
yeah, exactly right.
Right.
They have the time schedules and stuff like that of the train and stuff. It's really amazing. Yeah. Over here showing all the stops.
Mm-hmm.
She has a some photos of a train accident that happened near here, but not on the property. But it's pretty amazing, yeah. The tires are still there, the track is going.
Opened in 1921, the Copake Union Free School served generations of children in just 2 classrooms, kindergarten through 5th grade. The little school was one of the last small schools in Copake to close, only shutting its doors in 1977. In 2022, the building was purchased by Stephanie and Adam Sharp, who are in the process of a careful and painstaking restoration.
Well, when we moved in too, there was some kind of netting and structures up on the hinges there. I think they must have blocked off the windows when they had kids throwing.
When was this built?
21.
21?
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So I mean, we'll do something nice with this space.
It's great. We're from the Historical Society.
Yeah, they've shared a bunch of photos and old newspaper articles and things like that about the schoolhouse. So, yeah.
So it's exciting to be here.
That was originally this, you know, it had been covered up when they sold the school, I guess.
This is going to be an apartment
Yes.
here,
Yep.
and this is a bedroom.
This will be the bedroom for the apartment. The kitchen is on that side of the wall, and then this is the kind of living, dining space.
Do you have all these apartments rented already?
There's one upstairs that's rented. There's another one that hopefully they'll be signing a lease today. I'll show you that one. So anyway, I got the desk from her, and it looks, and a little chair that goes with it, and the chair looks exactly like that. So I've got that in the basement.
This was the kitchen for the school?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Not very big, was it?
I know. Well, there's only 2 classrooms of kids.
So we don't have to, I was thinking about
For a nice classroom.
I feel like I need to find some.
Yeah, these are nice. These are nice. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, these
Back in 1908, author Jeffrey Graylock called the Bashbish Falls awe-inspiring, and by the mid-19th century, the Bashbish Gorge and Falls had become the site of romantic pilgrimage and tourism. In 1874, successful New York lawyer Alfred Douglas bought the land in the immediate area, including the Bashbish Falls. He built an elaborate Swiss-style residence and multiple outbuildings. Much of the estate later became the basis for a far-flung resort called the Bashbish Inn. The inn, spread over 300 acres of woodland, boasted many quaint and charming guest houses, breathtaking views, and was run by a world-famous French chef, Gilded Age restaurateur, Louis Mouquin. A lavishly illustrated 24-page brochure from 1910 declared the Bashbish Inn is unique. There is no other place in the country that offers such a variety of attractions that is so accessible and satisfying.
Remember when we found all those?
See, if this is the Bashbish Inn,
Jane Peck and Leslie Doyle of the Roeliff Jansen Historical Society discuss and identify locations of the former Bashbish Inn.
Wall right on.
The walkabout to the inn's former locations will be led by Jane Peck. She is a Copake Falls native, a longtime board member of the Historical Society, and a founding member of the Friends of Taconic State Park. Jane is also a dedicated daily hiker and has walked these trails all her life. The Taconic State Park in Copake Falls, New York, is today a peaceful, scenic center for recreation and tourism, but it was once home to a bustling industrial center, the Copake Iron Works. Founded in 1845 by Lemuel Pomeroy of Pittsfield, Massachusetts, the ironworks sat in the perfect spot. Here in the forested hills, Pomeroy found everything he needed: iron ore, limestone, and endless trees to make charcoal, the key fuel for smelting iron. As the ironworks grew, so did the surrounding hamlet. The railroad arrived in 1852. The Taconic Wayside Inn opened in 1854 and is still open today. Immigrants, mostly Irish, came to work the blast furnace, foundry, and mines. In the woods, colliers made charcoal in giant pits, keeping the furnace fires fed. In 1862, the site was bought by Frederick Miles and his sons. A decade later, they expanded the operation, building a towering 32-foot furnace, an engine house, and even a narrow-gauge railroad. By the late 1800s, the Copake Iron Works was at its peak, the economic engine of a thriving community. But change came quickly. Steel from Pittsburgh, shrinking timber supplies, and shifting markets made the Copake operation unsustainable. In 1903, the last blast of the furnace cooled and the ironworks fell silent. 2 decades later, the land was folded into New York's growing park system, chosen not for its history, but to protect the scenic trails to the Bashbish Falls from the threat of commercial development. The ironworks, forgotten and overgrown, was left standing, and, as Edgar Masters explains, in 2008, the Friends of Taconic State Park stepped in. As a kid, did you know about the ironworks?
Not too much more familiar with the swimming, and as I grew older with the hiking, because that's what was emphasized in the park. The ironworks was just kind of here. And we all knew it was here, but we didn't pay much attention to it. Friends of Taconic State Park were formed in 2008. And we decided we're going to do something. And the do something turned out to be to try to preserve this ironworks. And the Friends have been extraordinarily successful at that. And the people in Copake Falls who have led that group have done a wonderful job. Our centerpiece, of course, is the furnace behind me, with the roof to protect it, with the arches rebuilt, with all of the shrubbery removed from it, the facing stones, the cement stones, replacing the original limestone marble blocks. But the other structures here are equally important. The engine blowing house, where the air was compressed and then sent to the top of the furnace, passed through heat exchangers and then pumped into the bottom to get the blast temperature up to 2,000 degrees. The brown building to my right, your left, was where the patterns were made for a product. There are other buildings here, the company store, the offices, the brick powder house, and the park manager's house, which was where the ironmaster lived. But there are more remaining ironworks structures in this complex than in any other in the Litchfield Iron District, which ran from Connecticut to Vermont.
And now the ironworks has a train again.
The Friends were not able to duplicate, obviously, the original Works Railroad because of crossing streams and state roads, but we have a replica off to my left, which is the same gauge, three feet. The engine, while driven gasoline, looks somewhat like the last engine that operated here in the late 1890s, early 1900s. We have a couple of ore cars for passengers to ride in, and we talk about the history of the ironworks, and it's fun.
This serene countryside is now called Boston Corners, New York, a town with an unusual past. Originally, this land belonged to Mount Washington, Massachusetts. Known at the time as Boston Corner, it was the farthest southwestern edge of the state, 150 miles from Boston itself. Back in 1731, the border between New York and Massachusetts was set along the Taconic mountain range. It was a natural boundary, but not a practical one. The nearest law enforcement was in Pittsfield, a full day's ride over the hills. That natural barrier turned Boston Corner into a kind of city of refuge. Criminals, fugitives, and illegal prize fighters found it the perfect place to carry out their illicit activities. By 1852, the New York Central's Harlem Line reached the area. Just a year later, on October 12, 1853, the town saw one of its most notorious events, a 37-round bare-fisted prize fight between John Morrissey and Yankee Sullivan. Around 3,000 spectators descended on the quiet hamlet. After several raucous and destructive days, many of the unwanted visitors finally boarded a passing freight train back to New York City, while others went south on foot, causing mayhem in Millerton. That was the breaking point. Frustrated residents of the hamlet petitioned to join New York State. Massachusetts and New York both agreed, and Congress confirmed it in 1855. And on April 13th, 1857, Boston Corner officially became part of Ancram, New York. Carol Falsetti and her husband Norman Osofsky have lived on their farm in Boston Corners for many years. In 2019, historian Jim Mackin, RJHS board member Jane Peck, and Copake resident Bruce Darling set out into the woods to find the official survey marker dating all the way back from 1731.
Norm said he always knew this was kind of important, but we didn't think until we met Jim, until Jim said, well, we found the mark of the original tri-corner.
Yeah, he had a New York Times article describing where it was.
Yeah.
And it was just at the end of a stone wall. We scuffed around in the leaves, and what's this? And it was maybe sticking up off the ground, buried in leaves, like that much.
More buried, yes. We've been keeping it clear. And Norm said, and was there a trailer at the end of the road? And Jim said, yes. And he said, and you were on a woods road? And Jim said, yes. And then he turned to me and he said, that's our property.
Right.
So right away we came to look for it.
Oh, I see.
So when you got up here, Jane,
Yes. Well, we kind of went with our feet, like this. I think Bruce got down on his hands and knees. Yeah. So it was...
Jim and Ed Masters came. They think that this is the original one that was done for the oblong, because they looked at how it was made and what it was made out of, and they don't think it was the 1853. I'm not too sure exactly. But this would have been ascertained again as the original marker in 1853.
Pumpkin Hollow in Taconic, New York, is where nature and history have coexisted for centuries. Today, the site is home to the Northeast Theosophical Foundation, founded in 1936. But long before it became Pumpkin Hollow Retreat, it was home to a working grist mill known as Mill Success. This land was once part of Livingston Manor, a vast 160,000-acre tract granted to Robert Livingston in the early 1700s by the British Crown. To support tenant farming on the land, Livingston established several mills along local waterways. Mill Success, a grist mill, was built along the Taconic Creek. Michael Ceylon, son of one of Pumpkin Hollow's founders, has researched the mill's history and took members of the Roeliff Jansen Historical Society and Copake's Historic Preservation Committee on an insightful and inspiring tour.
The men and the families that came to colonize and pioneers around 1700 were all grain farmers. So in the grain farming, absolutely necessitated to have mills. This stone here is the passive stone, and the stone above it is a drive stone. That's the one that we're going on like this. That is a log jam up here, and walked into the side of the hill. Above here is the entrance. And these men would have for acre after acre after acre by hand, and then they had to collect with rakes into bundles. Then they would take the grain still attached to the staff, the straw, and they had to take it, and then it has another piece of wood, and you just go wham, 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 and now you're knocking the grain off the chaff. And they harvested that grain, it's all in little bundles, and now on the floor is the raw grain. That's what they got to put in stacks, take their wagon, and get it over here to be dry.
It was during COVID. I purchased the farm property, which was 18 acres, plus the farmhouse compound in fall of 2020. I was very drawn to the fact that so many of the historic buildings were all intact, that it created both architecture and showed a very particular relationship with the outdoor yards, which really intrigued me. And on top of that, I was very interested in knowing who lived here, who was the family that lived here, and I wanted to know that story. And it was after that time that I began to learn more about Frank Sherman through the Grange and through Janet Mackin as the historian at the Grange. And as I delved deeper into that, I recognized that he was such a significant figure in the community that I wanted to continue that research. And I ended up filing an addendum to the National Register nomination to make sure that we captured and memorialized his achievements in his life as part of the nomination. And then the property's name was changed to the Sweet Sherman Homestead to recognize that.
In 2024, as historian, I thought it was very important to capture the history of the Copake Grange. There's a lot of history there, and it comes mostly from the minutes. So from those minutes, I decided we'd look at the period from 1902 to 1922, the most eventful time of the Grange. New building, pandemic, World War. There were so many things that happened that year. I thought that was the focus we should have.
But the book, of course, starts with the first master of the Grange, and that's Frank Sherman. This is a picture of him when he was probably later in life. He was a young man when he became the master of the Grange, and he was beloved. He lived on a sweet farm. That was his grandparents' place, and he was very committed to farming, scientific farming, worked with the Cornell Cooperative, and really wanted to bring knowledge to the local farmers.
The sweet Sherman homestead was located about 2.9 miles northwest of the hamlet. So it was a relatively short distance, but a treacherous drive on what were then dirt roads and muddy roads up until very late.
So it's 1903, and Frank Sherman, our master, is coming to the Grange from his home, which is the Sweet Farm, several miles down the road from here. How would he have been coming here? Well, maybe horse and buggy, maybe a wagon. Come down this road, which would have been mud probably at that time, especially at this time of year, the spring. And he would have pulled up in his wagon, his buggy, and he'd probably have put it over here. On the right, it would have been empty. The schoolhouse didn't come along till 1922. Plenty of room in that time of 1903 to park horse and buggies and carriages over here.
In 1871, Henry Astor III, grandson of New York magnate John Jacob Astor, married Malvina Deinhardt, a member of one of Copake's oldest farming families. Turning away from New York society, the couple settled in West Copake, where Astor embraced life as a gentleman farmer. They built what was called the most luxurious house of its time, followed in 1902 by the elegant Victorian guest cottage. Though the main house was lost to fire in the 1940s, the guest cottage still stands. Today, it's being lovingly restored by owners Allie and Casey Koki.
And I came across this on Zillow, and I just immediately fell in love with it. And so we picked a weekend and flew out here in the spring a few years back and just loved it, fell in love with it.
Built in the early 1800s, the East Gate Toll House was one of 3 along the Columbia Turnpike, and today it's one of only 2 that survive. It was placed on the National Register in 2016. The construction of the Columbia Turnpike was one of the most important economic initiatives in the region, impacting not just Columbia County, but the western counties of Massachusetts as well. The Turnpike Corporation funded road improvements through tolls and the public sale of shares. In 2016, a group of local residents, civic leaders, and preservationists came together to form the Friends of Eastgate. Their mission, to restore the toll house as a heritage site and welcoming destination for future generations. The hamlet of Hillsdale was founded in 1788. The history of the hamlet is closely tied to the railroad. Beginning in 1852, what's now the Station District became a transportation hub and commercial crossroads for goods and travelers through the region. Today, the town center and historic district features many restored and repurposed buildings. Around the Soldiers and Sailors Monument at Cullen Park, there is the Passiflora Gift Shop, the Cook and Larder, the historic Hillsdale House, and down Anthony Street to the Mercantile Building, now the Roe Jan Brewery. The old harness shop is home to the Twisted Sisters Coffee House. Originally built as Dimmock's in 1855, this classic American general store was a central part of the daily life of Hillsdale during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Over the years, the retail building has housed a wide range of businesses, including a grocery store, a sports shop, an electronics store, and a video rental outlet. Now open as the Hillsdale General Store, this venerable institution continues to be central to the life of the hamlet and to the surrounding communities.
This was the first house we found. It was up for sale by the granddaughter of the man who built it in 1875. His name was Friedland Pulver, and his initials are in the basement on the foundation. He built this house in 1875, and at the time, diagonally across the street was the mercantile business, and he was the manager of it. So he made sure that he could see his business from the house. And Louise Leonard grew up here, married Mr. Leonard, but her stepmother was Ida Pulver. And Ida, Orson's, Freeland's wife, was the first woman to set up the garden club, and she had a beautiful garden in back of this house.
The Gallatin Reformed Church, also known as the Gallatin Community Church, has served its community for more than 200 years. The current building, dedicated in February 1824, stands as a beautiful example of early 19th century American meeting house design. In 2021, the church was officially listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Behind it lies a sprawling cemetery established before the American Revolution. Its presence offers a powerful connection to the region's earliest days. Today, the church is lovingly maintained by Melissa Curtis and Pastor Bob Rogaszewski, while Gallatin town historian Louisa Ruby continues to research and share its rich and evolving history. Built in 1876, the Copake Railroad Depot is a rare surviving example of a rural train station. Originally a modest one-story passenger stop, it was expanded in 1913 to include a freight house, featuring original board and batten siding and a classic gable roof with deep overhanging eaves. The arrival of the railroad transformed local agriculture, giving Copake's farmers direct access to New York City markets and fueling the growth of the dairy industry. Today, under the care of Stephanie and Adam Sharp, the depot is gradually being brought back to life. Sites to Celebrate is installed in a fine example of adaptive reuse. The former Carpenter Gothic church in the heart of Copake Falls, dating from 1892, was rescued and restored by the local community, and in 1983 became home to the Roeliff Jansen Historical Society, a perfect venue for an exhibition focusing on the stewardship and preservation of historic places.